Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 276, the Down Under edition. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm David Old, and here in Sydney, Australia, it is Friday, March the 17th, 2017.
Well, it's not often we get to speak to the guy down under.
That's your Kevin. You don't call me enough.
It's
I'm
true. It's
ready
my
to
fault.
talk about anything you want.
Oh, good, because I have two topics I want to talk about. First, we'll talk about the Bishop of Newcastle, and then we're going to talk about alcoholic beverages. But before
Yes,
we get to that, tell us a little bit about the Anglican Church in Australia, because this will set up a little context.
Sure. So the Anglican Church of Australia is one of the provinces of the Anglican Communion, and we are a number of dioceses dotted all around the country. The big issue for us at the moment is actually not what you'd think it would be. Everywhere else, it's same-sex marriage, and yes, that's bubbling away in the background. But the big issue for us at the moment is a royal commission here in Australia, which is impacting all over Australian life and looking at institutional responses to child sex abuse. And of course, one of the institutions they're looking at are the different church denominations, and the Anglican Church has taken its own part in that.
During this commissioning, they found it in the Anglican Communion.
What's that, sorry?
They found it in your churches.
Yes. So like every other institution in public life, we've had instances, horrible instances, of the abuse of children, sexual and otherwise. And of course, when that happens in church, it's horrendous, isn't it? Because this should be the safe space, the place where we look at children. A couple of dioceses in particular have had some really, really horrible issues, and they're both in New South Wales, where we live. One is Grafton to the north, and one is just north of Sydney, is a place called Newcastle. And there was some horrendous stuff going on based out of one of the old theological colleges. And there was a ring of paedophiles, basically, who were looking after each other and abusing children and passing them on one to another. And then all looking after each other. And it got so much that the dean of the cathedral himself was accused and in a church court found guilty of this misconduct and defrocked, and terrible atmosphere. They compounded the horrible abuse of children by then just being terrible to maintain their positions in the church. And a number of archbishops didn't deal with it properly. So quite famously recently, Archbishop of Perth resigned. He was former bishop of Newcastle, and it became quite clear during his testimony that he gave to the Royal Commission that he had not dealt at all well with the allegations when they were first brought to him. He finally resigned as Archbishop a short while ago in Perth. And then the next bishop, Farron, himself, it seems, didn't deal with this all the well, and he ended up resigning over the matter. And then they were without a bishop for a while. And then they appointed Greg Thompson, who was diocesan bishop of the Northern Territory, and they appointed him in Newcastle. And Greg Thompson set about, to his credit, dealing with this issue. Through the process, it became public that he himself had been a victim of abuse by a former bishop, he said, and so it was personal for him. And finally, those in the diocese, particularly the Director of Professional Standards, Michael Elliott, had a champion right at the top who was able to get this stuff done, and he took on his critics. And there was a ferocious opposition to him on this matter, but he stuck it out, and there has been, I think, what you could call, in large elements, a wholesale change at the top in Newcastle in terms of how these matters are dealt with, a public apology.
Now, we hear things back here in the States, you know, the rumor mill about what's going on. I understand that part of the resignation of Bishop Greg comes from his, I don't want to use the word bully, but his bullying of other people.
Well, Kevin, I'm not sure that stuff we want to talk about today. Today is probably a day when we just pray for the Diocese of Newcastle and pray for Bishop Greg and his family. He's taken a lot of flack over this issue that he simply does not deserve to take. He's been a courageous man on this issue and done really, really well. Maybe in weeks and months to come, there'll be other conversations about the fullness of his legacy. That might be a polite way to put it.
Well, I think he certainly said that this is taking a horrible effect on his health.
Say that again, sorry?
He said this has had an effect on his health.
Well, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine being yourself the victim of quite horrendous abuse and processing that over your lifetime? And we work in the charity that I head up. We're often seeing people for whom this is their story, and it lasts for decades. You cannot understate in any way the effect this sort of abuse has on people. And then can you imagine being the guy who's responsible for rooting it out? And the principal people you're going up against are more clergymen and senior laity who are pushing back against you because you're dealing with this issue. I don't think you can even begin to imagine the psychological effect that has on someone. But to his credit, on this issue, he has stuck it out, pushed on through. And then he has been on a quite extended sick leave for a while and not been present at many diocesan events. And look, no one was surprised when his resignation as bishop was announced. He stepped back from this ministry. Maybe in the future he'll take on some other ministry, but he stepped back there. But yeah, it's. I don't think you could blame him at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Today is the day to thank him for his hard work in this area.
Now let's talk a little bit about now. This doesn't at all resolve the Royal Commission issue.
No. Well, in some sense, some of it's been resolved. People have been prosecuted. People have been defrocked. It goes on. The actual Royal Commission meets again today to wrap up the final Anglican stuff. The Archbishop of Sydney will be appearing before the Royal Commission as part of this final wrap-up procedure, and that'll go on until Wednesday. It's not an inquisitorial process. Most of the testimony is sorted out beforehand, as happens in these things. Occasionally there'll be what you might call a hostile witness in the box, in which case counsel for the commission goes for them, and there's been some instances of that have been good to see, the counsel for the commission going for people, not least this Dean Lawrence of Newcastle, who appeared in the box and did himself no favours by being offensive and the rest of it. But that's getting wrapped up now as the Royal Commission comes to an end. What we're really looking forward to is seeing the proposals that the Commission puts forward and suggestions and recommendations put forward, most of which probably you'll find that the Anglican churches have already put in place. It's been a real learning process for us on this issue, and most of the dioceses have got it all in place now and have much more robust systems in place. Certainly here in Sydney we do. We have a very robust system in place.
Good. Do you get to watch YouTube at all?
Do I get to watch YouTube at all? I watch some YouTube. What have I missed, Kevin?
Well, there's an advertising campaign over there in that island down under involving Christians and alcoholic beverages called beer. And I wonder if you got to see any of that.
Oh, did we see this? The whole of Australia has seen this. So let me give you some background. The Bible Society in Australia is celebrating their 200th anniversary. They're actually the oldest charitable organisation in Australia. 200 years of getting the Bible into the hands of Australians. Great work that they do. And their current strapline is "Live Light," which is a very, very clever, your word is a light to my path and all that kind of stuff. Very, very clever. So, as part of the 200th anniversary celebrations, a beer company called Cooper's, I'll tell you a little bit about them in a moment, have agreed to do a little bit of co-branding on their cans, on their light beer. You see what's going on there? Mm-hmm. And so they co-brand it, little Bible Society 200th anniversary, congratulations, and also some Bible verses on the cans and on the bottles. All good so far. Why Coopers, you ask? Well, because the Coopers beer company is owned by a Christian family, the Coopers, who were Methodists, if I understand it right, in the 19th century in South Australia, who brewed beer for medicinal purposes. And that's not a joke or an excuse. It's actually a genuine.
What other purpose would there be, David?
Exactly. So chocolate and beer, medicinal all the way. So these are serious temperance guys who actually go. Sometimes there is a benefit to alcohol. Paul writes to Timothy and says, have a little bit of red wine to settle the stomach. So they brew it medicinally, and then they extend to brewing beer as the sensible alternative to hard spirits. And now they brew all sorts of different beers, and it's a good beer. I made sure that I sampled a little bit a while ago, just so I could give you an accurate report.
We appreciate that. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
So there we go. So Coopers are doing this co-branding on the Live Light, and it's all well and good. And they're well known for being a philanthropic organization. They support other charities. They've been good, stalwart supporters of the Bible Society. In fact, every active serviceman and woman in Australia, in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, as I understand it, has a copy of the Bible from the Bible Society funded by the Coopers family.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they had a case of beer. Okay.
Well, no. I don't know which one they'd prefer, but the Coopers family decided that the Word of God was even more important than a case of beer.
Okay.
I understand that servicemen and women have little problem finding beer themselves. It's getting their hands on Bibles that's more difficult. So anyway, on we go. So as part of the 200th anniversary of the Bible Society, they decided it'd be great to model good and responsible and respectful conversations over difficult topics in which Christians are involved. And so they do this little video campaign called Keeping It Light. And they go to Canberra and to the Parliament House there. Our capital is Canberra, not Sydney. And they go there and they film this little discussion in the bar at Canberra. And it's the guy from Bible Society in the middle hosting it. And on two sides with him, each holding a bottle of Cooper's Light, are two Conservative members of Parliament. One of them is a gentleman called Tim Wilson, who is the former Human Rights Commissioner of Australia. And he is... Is that your cat going nuts in the background? Is that what that was?
That's my dog chasing the cat.
It's your dog chasing the cat. All I heard was like...
Talk about two animals really in need of a beer. It's my dog and my cat.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. Right. So Tim Wilson, former Human Rights Commissioner, an openly gay man, but an erudite and a lovely guy, and he's big on freedom of expression. Mm-hmm. He's in one corner arguing for same-sex marriage, and on the other side, a gentleman called Andrew Hastie, who's a former army officer and a Christian, arguing for keeping the definition of marriage as it is. I say arguing because it wasn't an argument. It was a really lovely conversation, and honestly, I've got to say, Tim Wilson, the gay guy, the pro same-sex marriage guy, came off better. I think he mounted his arguments better, and he got the better just of the banter as well. And they all live light, and they thank Coopers for providing them a bottle of light beer. And I've actually got a really good little conversation about the whole marriage debate. You couldn't want for more, you'd have thought. Anyway, it goes nuts on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and whatever, and it's how dare Coopers be promoting this rampant homophobia. It's awful, it's terrible. It's almost as though, Kevin, the people protesting hadn't actually watched the video.
No, I mean, David, you need to take that back. Everybody in Sydney is well researched and reads all of their information before they comment. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely. So Cooper's issue, the first press release, which is basically the little bit of a step back. Look, we didn't authorize and approve this. We value all our customers. Pretty bland. Give the crocodiles a bit of meat, which, as we all know, makes the crocodiles go home. Oh no, it doesn't. They go absolutely ballistic. It's outrageous. The rest of it, there's YouTube videos of people smashing bottles of Cooper's beer on the ground. There's pubs that go, we will no longer serve Cooper's beer, as long as this goes on. And so then Cooper's issued this second press release, which is really like, we didn't want to offend anybody. It's terrible. We value equality and like this. They folded like a cheap pack of cards, Kevin. It was actually quite embarrassing to watch. And then they go and do their own video, and it's Tim Cooper, who we do know is a good and godly Christian man, at the press conference a couple of days before, where they co-launched the beer bottles, he basically gave a stunning presentation of the gospel. It was brilliant, and yet there he is, and you know what you can see in his eyes? You can just see the fear. You can just see the fear. And with him is his head of marketing or public relations or whatever it is, and they do this cameo thing, and it looks like. Do you remember when what's the name of the actor in Pirates of the Caribbean? I forget his name. Johnny Depp. Do you remember
Johnny
when he
Depp,
and his
yes.
he and his wife brought the dog into Australia, and they weren't meant to because they didn't quarantine the dog, and then they did that rather embarrassing video where they went,
We're sorry.
We're sorry. It was 1,000 times worse than that.
No, that was so bad.
It was just it was poorly done anyway. As a Christian, you just went, mate, what happened? What happened here? They just capitulated. We're signing up to the pro-gay marriage alliance thing. And you know what? You know what came to mind is that scene in Acts 19 where Paul is in Ephesus and he tries to have this debate, and the silversmiths, whose business of their gods, making gods, is they recognize might be under threat. And it's not really, is it? Because they're everywhere in Ephesus. They own the joint. The big temple of Artemis is the highest point in Ephesus. No one's going to take it over. But Paul even dares stand up and say, look, perhaps there's another god that we should worship. And they go, great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! They shout him out, and then some other guy tries to get up and say, look, hang on, can't we just have a reasonable conversation? They go, no! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! We believe in free speech! Oh, no, hang on, that wasn't it.
No. And nobody said, what does he look like? We could just remake all these gods and charge double, but, you know.
Oh, yeah. What's been really interesting is there's been then this public debate in Australia, and you've seen some of the conservatives commentators push back a bit and go, what's going on? Tim Wilson himself has said, and good on him, has said, this is ridiculous. We were just having a nice conversation. And it's actually one of those moments of great irony, isn't it? Because there's people going, oh, it's all about human rights. You're denying our human rights. Well, the flipping Human Rights Commissioner is sitting there going, don't be silly. And they go, oh, it's all anti-gay. Well, the most prominent erudite gay man in the country at the moment is going, don't be silly. So it's actually got nothing to do with human rights. It's got nothing to do with gay rights. It's actually all about freedom of speech and expression. And I actually talked to the guy in the middle of the video. I picked up the phone to him and I said, look, I'm going to be podcasting about this. I'm going to be videoing about this. Let's have a little chat. He said, sure, David, anything for you, like you do. And he said a really telling thing to me. He said, we wanted to show that in Australia you can still have two Australian blokes can go to the pub and have a beer and still chat about stuff and go, do you know what? I think you're wrong, but that's okay. You're my mate. Let's talk about these heavy things. Well, we've seen that to be what it is, haven't we?
No, I mean, you basically had a big opening scene to Crocodile Dundee going on down there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it was
here's the big thing. At some point, somebody's at the boardroom said, I don't think this is a good idea. And he got shouted down. You know, somebody said, I don't think we should do this. And everybody looked at him and said, what, are you crazy? This will work. You know, and guess what?
Well, so let me tell you what I think was going on there. What I think was going on, and then just an observation for Christians. I understand from sources I have spoken to that it was a gentleman's agreement between Tim Cooper and the Bible Society that they would be just gently supportive of this. Neither side nailed that down, and I think when you're co-branding anything, you just have to nail it down. So I expect to see my logo prominently done right here afterwards, right? Because we have a tight. Oh no, we only have a gentleman's agreement. You'll be respectful to me. So there's just first of all that they actually, as genius as the campaign was, I actually think it's really, really good. They didn't nail down those details. But secondly, if you're a Christian in business or in any leadership, it is not enough for you to be a Christian. You actually need good and godly Christian counsel around you, because I think the advice that Tim Cooper got was absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
Do you know what? When the crocodiles began to gnash and bite furiously, a whole bunch of Christians went, do you know what? I'm going to go out and buy a couple of slabs of Coopers now. We call them slabs, those big trays, I think. I'm going to go out and buy a couple of slabs of Coopers. It's Coopers. It's Coopers, and I even did my little hashtag, I'll drink with you. Remember the I'll drive with you thing. I'll drink with you. But then they folded like a cheap pack of cards, mate. It was awful to watch. You know that moment where you just watch your Christian brother just go under, go under. And so my heart, if your viewers are going to do anything, it's very hard for them to buy some Coopers today or break it or whatever they want to do. But what they ought to do is pray for Tim Cooper and his family. Because they are at the center of this maelstrom, really just for being Christians, and they're feeling it. And they're feeling now what the bakers are feeling and the florists are feeling. And they've not been served well by their senior management in this. And I don't think we as Christians, no, even more than that, we as advocates of free speech have been served well by the senior management of Coopers, who should have just gone, do you know what? Get over it. It's just a little video. And they were being reasonable. And if you actually really don't want to buy Coopers, well, that's okay. There's a breach of contract issue there. That's fine. We'll take you to court. And if you don't want to buy Coopers, that's fine, because all of a sudden we're finding that most Christians aren't in the temperance movement, and they're quite happy to support. We could have had a Chick-fil-A moment, right? This could have been. And you know what's even better? It wouldn't even have been over chicken sandwiches, which are good enough. It would have been over beer. What a wonderful thing to have here in Australia. Chick-fil-A would have been a thing of the past. It would have been Coopers.
If human history has taught us one thing, it's always the reaction, not the event. The reaction to the event that is worse. And when you react to that, it's all over. Yeah.
And as my blogging colleague at Stand Firm, Sarah High, has long taught me, she's in the PR game. You take control of it. You take control of it. And she has this. Her whole attitude on PR is brilliant. She just goes, "All right, whatever," but we're going to carry on. It's brilliant, and it's actually great PR advice. Yeah, this will have passed over to the next thing.
If I were Coopers, I would have said, "Come and buy more beer so you can break it on the rocks and throw it around."
Absolutely.
Marketing to the roof. If this is the new thing here, if this is down under, if this is Sydney, we're going to throw our beer. We got it for you.
Yeah. Well, just to be safe, I'm drinking plain water today. In a totally unmarked, no brands. Put the brand away. We'll get in trouble.
What?
Pepsi will get taken down tomorrow because of that.
Folgers. Okay.
There you go. There it is.
David, I want to thank you for your time. Have yourself a good weekend, and do enjoy some alcoholic beverage this weekend with your family.
It'll be a red wine from the Hunter Valley. Let the listener understand that's the Newcastle Diocese. As I continue to pray for them, I'll be drinking a bit of Shiraz from the Hunter Valley, and maybe a sneaky Cooper's later.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, David.
Thanks, Kev. Take care. God bless.